There exists an organization that 99% of people cannot name, yet it controls the economic policy of 190 countries. An organization that can force a democratically elected government to cut pensions, privatize hospitals, fire teachers, and sell national resources to foreign corporations. It has zero democratic accountability, answering to no electorate, yet it wields more real power over your life than your own government. This organization is called the International Monetary Fund, and what it really does will shock you. Hello everyone, I am a development economist who has specialized in sovereign debt and international financial institutions for the past 20 years, and I have worked in several countries that have undergone IMF programs. What I have witnessed disgusts me with the global financial system, because the IMF is not there to help poor countries. It is there to control them, to extract their wealth, to keep them indebted and dependent forever. This is modern financial colonialism, disguised as international aid. In this video, you will discover how the IMF really functions as a global debt enforcer whose policies disproportionately harm developing nations. You will understand how the conditions imposed by the IMF destroy economies rather than save them. And most importantly, you will learn how this system represents a modern form of financial colonialism that transfers trillions of dollars from poor countries to the banks and corporations of rich countries. Stay until the end, because I will reveal the 5 countries currently resisting the IMF and how they offer an alternative model. Let us start by destroying the fundamental myth. The International Monetary Fund presents itself as a benevolent institution created to help countries in financial crisis. Wrong. Completely wrong. The IMF was created in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference, officially to provide short-term financial assistance during crises. But look at who created the IMF: the United States and Great Britain, the 2 greatest imperial powers of that era. Why would they create an institution to help weaker countries? Out of charity? No, for control. And here is how it works. A developing country goes through a crisis. A balance of payments deficit, currency collapse, capital flight, panic. The government has no options left. It turns to the International Monetary Fund. The IMF offers a loan, but only on one condition. You must do exactly what we say. If not, no money. The IMF conditions are poison disguised as medicine. These typical conditions are called structural adjustment programs. That sounds technical and neutral, but it is systematic economic destruction. Condition number 1. Currency devaluation. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, requires the country to devalue its currency. Why? Officially, to make exports more competitive. In reality, to make foreign debts more expensive and to make the country instantly poorer. When you devalue your currency by 50%, everything you import costs twice as much. Food, energy, medicine, everything. Your population becomes impoverished overnight. Condition number 2. Massive cuts in public spending. The IMF demands austerity. Reduce the deficit. Balance the budget. How? Public healthcare is slashed. Education budgets are gutted. Civil servants' salaries are cut. while foreign creditors continue to be paid in full. Condition number 3, privatization of state assets. The IMF demands that the country sell its public enterprises, electricity companies, water utilities, telecommunications, mines and banks. Everything must be privatized. Who buys them? Multinational corporations, often at fire sale prices during a crisis. National assets built over generations with taxpayers' money are sold for a fraction of their value to foreigners. Condition number 4, deregulation and market opening. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, demands the elimination of trade barriers, the removal of capital controls, and financial deregulation, officially to attract foreign investment and stimulate growth. In reality, these policies allow foreign corporations to dominate local markets and to facilitate capital flight. Framed as economic reforms, these measures often weaken domestic industries, reduce government revenues, and increase unemployment, making long-term recovery more difficult. These are not healing measures. These are extraction measures. When the patient does not heal, it becomes dependent for life. The real consequences: destruction and impoverishment. Example number 1, Jamaica. In the 1970s and the 1980s, Jamaica borrowed from the International Monetary Fund. The conditions the fund imposed forced the government to make massive cuts to social spending. Health expenditures dropped by 50%, and education spending fell by 30%. As a result, hospitals lacked basic medicines. Schools lacked books and teachers. An entire generation suffered. Meanwhile, Jamaica was paying more in debt service than it spent on health and education combined. Example number 2, Argentina. In the 1990s, Argentina faithfully followed IMF prescriptions. Massive privatization, total deregulation, market opening. The IMF praised Argentina as a model. Then, in 2001, everything collapsed. The currency crashed and banks shut down. Poverty exploded to over 50% of the population. Millions of middle-class people became poor overnight. The IMF model destroyed Argentina. Example number 3, Greece. More recently, Greece was subjected to draconian austerity programs imposed by the International Monetary Fund and the European Union. Pensions were cut by 40%. Public salaries were reduced by 30%, and health services were dismantled. As a result, the Greek economy lost 25% of its gross domestic product. Youth unemployment exceeded 50%. Thousands of people died from lack of medical care. Greece was economically destroyed, but the German and French banks that had lent to Greece were repaid in full. See the pattern? International Monetary Fund programs do not stabilize economies. They destroy them. They do not reduce poverty. They increase it. They do not create growth. They create depression. But they always accomplish one objective: guaranteeing that foreign creditors, the banks and the corporations, get paid. The real mechanism: large-scale wealth extraction. And here is what nobody tells you. Poor and emerging economies spend enormous sums every year just to service their foreign debt. Trillions of dollars have flowed from these countries to the banks and corporations of rich nations over recent decades. Look at the numbers. Sub-Saharan Africa has received approximately $540 billion in loans since 1970. How much has it repaid? More than $550 billion. So Africa has repaid more than it borrowed. But how much does it still owe? More than $200 billion. How is this mathematically possible? Interest. Compound interest. The debt never decreases. It increases. Latin America borrowed $300 billion in the 1970s and the 1980s. It has repaid more than $700 billion, but still owes $750 billion. Once again, repaying more than borrowed, but still owing more. This is a mechanism of perpetual extraction. And where do these debt payments go? To the banks in New York, London, Paris, and Frankfurt. To multinational corporations. To investors in rich countries. This is a massive wealth transfer from the global south to the global north, from the poor to the rich, from the exploited to the exploiters. If you are starting to understand that the IMF is not a humanitarian organization, but a tool of domination, then subscribe to this channel now and activate notifications. Because what I am about to reveal next is even more shocking. Modern financial colonialism. The broader claim is that this system represents a modern form of financial colonialism. Power within global financial institutions is heavily biased toward wealthy nations, particularly the United States and other countries of the global north, allowing them to shape rules that protect their own financial interests. Look at how the IMF is structured. Each member country has voting rights based on its financial contribution. The more you contribute, the more you vote. The United States has 17% of the votes, enough to block any major decision requiring 85%. Western Europe combined has over 30%. Together, rich countries completely control the IMF. Poor countries. All of Africa has less than 5% of the votes. Latin America has about 7%. They cannot decide anything. They just submit. The rules are written by the rich for the rich. The poor have no voice. And here is what is even more revealing. The managing director of the IMF has always been European. Since 1944. The president of the World Bank has always been American. It is an informal agreement between the United States and Europe. They share control of global financial institutions. Developing countries never lead. They obey. Debt thus becomes a control mechanism, transferring wealth upward while limiting the economic sovereignty of developing nations. An indebted country cannot disobey. It needs constant refinancing. It must accept the conditions. It must privatize. It must deregulate. It must open its markets. It must abandon its economic sovereignty. This is exactly like classical colonialism. Before, European powers sent armies to conquer and extract resources. Now, they send the IMF to indebt and extract wealth. The mechanism has changed. The extraction continues. Cycles of dependency and repeated indebtedness. Rather than stabilizing economies, these policies frequently lock countries into cycles of dependency and repeated borrowing. Here is how the cycle works. Step 1. The country borrows during a crisis. Step 2. The IMF imposes austerity and privatizations. Step 3. The economy contracts because of austerity. Step 4. Government revenues plummet. Step 5. The deficit persists or worsens. Step 6. The country must borrow again. Back to Step 1. The cycle repeats. This is intentional. A country that can repay its debt and become independent is a country lost to the control system. But a perpetually indebted country is a perpetually controllable country. So the system is designed so that debt is never repaid, just refinanced eternally. Look at the same countries returning to the IMF again and again. Pakistan has had 22 IMF programs since 1958. Argentina has had 21 programs. Egypt has had 12 programs. Jamaica has had 18 programs. These programs are supposed to solve problems, but countries always come back. Why? Because the programs create the conditions for the next crisis. Examples of resistance: those who say no. Now, let me reveal the 5 countries currently resisting the IMF and how they offer an alternative model. Country number 1, China. China repaid all its debts to the IMF in the 1980s and never borrowed again. Instead of following IMF prescriptions, it did the opposite. It imposed strict capital controls, maintained state ownership of strategic sectors, and protected infant industries. The result was the greatest economic transformation in history. 800 million people were lifted out of poverty in 40 years. Country number 2, Russia. After the 1998 crisis, Russia briefly followed advice from the IMF. It was a total disaster. Then Putin arrived. He repaid all debts to the IMF in 2005. He renationalized strategic sectors, and he imposed controls on oligarchs. Russia regained its economic sovereignty. Country number 3 is Bolivia. Under Evo Morales, Bolivia expelled the IMF and the World Bank in 2007. It nationalized its natural resources, especially natural gas, and it used the revenues for social programs. The result was strong economic growth, a fall in poverty from 60% to 35%, and financial stability without the IMF. Country number 4, Ecuador. In 2008, President Rafael Correa audited the national debt. The audit found 70% of the debt was illegitimate, contracted by previous dictatorships or under illegal conditions. Correa refused to pay the debt. He defied the IMF. As a result, the economy grew. Social spending increased. The country prospered without the IMF. Country number 5, Venezuela. Despite all of Venezuela's current problems, it must be noted that they repaid all their debts to the IMF in 2007, and they refused to accept imposed conditions. The current chaos has other causes, but at least they are not controlled by the IMF. The pattern is clear. Countries that resist the IMF, that protect their economic sovereignty, that refuse to privatize and blindly deregulate, can prosper. Countries that submit to the IMF remain poor and dependent. What can we learn? 5 crucial lessons. Lesson number 1. Debt is a weapon. It is not an accident. It is not mismanagement. It is a deliberate control strategy. An indebted country can be controlled. A debt-free country is dangerous to the established order. Lesson number 2. International institutions are not neutral. The IMF, the World Bank, and the WTO are controlled by wealthy countries to serve their interests. They are not humanitarian organizations. They are tools of domination. Lesson number 3. Austerity never works. Cutting spending during a recession worsens the recession. That is basic economics. But the IMF always imposes austerity. Why? Because the goal is not growth. The goal is extraction. Lesson number 4. Economic sovereignty is essential. Countries that control their own currency, their own central bank, and their own strategic sectors can defend themselves. Countries that abandon this sovereignty become economic colonies. Lesson number 5. Resistance is possible. The examples of China, Russia, Bolivia, and Ecuador show that it is possible to say no to the IMF. It is possible to follow a different path. It is possible to prosper without submitting. Here is the final truth. The IMF is a secretive organization that controls 190 countries, not militarily, but financially, through debt, through conditions, through extraction. This is modern colonialism. This is systematic exploitation. This is the transfer of trillions of dollars from the poor to the rich, disguised as international aid. And this system persists because most people do not understand. They think the IMF helps. They believe the press releases. They do not see the real mechanisms. Now you know. You can no longer ignore this. You are responsible for this knowledge. If this revelation of the IMF's real role as a global debt enforcer and tool of financial colonialism has shocked you, if you now understand that debt is a weapon of control, then subscribe to this channel immediately. Activate all notifications. Share this video. People need to know the truth. In my next video, I'm going to reveal how the World Bank works in tandem with the IMF to control developing countries, and how together they form the most sophisticated system of economic domination ever conceived. Leave me a comment if you thought the IMF really helped poor countries before this video. Has your awareness changed? Share your reaction. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of the secret organization that quietly controls 90% of global GDP. Remember, the IMF is not your friend. It is a tool of domination. Debt is not a problem to solve. It is a weapon to be used. And you are either on the side of the controllers or on the side of the controlled. Choose your side. See you very soon.